In this video we're going to start texturing our terrain with some grass, and we might even add some trees as well. So let's get a little bit closer to our terrain. Now these kind of things that are showing up here are just basically the shadows that are coming off the cliffs. We shouldn't see these once we have some grass on there. Okay, so let's click on the terrain and we get our tools back. This is to paint trees and this is to paint details. Details include grass. Okay, so click on that icon and then we want to click edit details and add a grass texture. Okay, where it says detail texture here, you can click this little target and from here we can now type grass. So this time we need the billboard grass. Okay, we have this one and this one. I actually want this second one. Double click on it. Okay, and we have it set there. These are the configurable options. So the width and the minimum width and the maximum width and the height, minimum maximum. Okay, so let's just lower these a little bit. So instead of 1, let's have 0.5, and instead of 2, let's just have 1. Okay, so we just reduce this a bit. The height, let's make it 0.5 as well, and the maximum height 1. Okay, noise spread, this basically means how much variation do you get between the minimum and the maximum on both of those. The moment 0.1 means it's relatively the same all over, it's uniform. Okay, the higher this number becomes, the more variation you get. So let's go around 0.4. And this is the colour that the grass will actually be painted in, and we definitely want the billboard to be checked. So click add. Nothing happens yet. We need to definitely reduce our brush size. It's way too big. Okay, good. Our opacity is how much do we paint. Okay, so the more opacity, the more grass we paint. The less opacity, the less grass we paint. The target strength is it basically does something very similar to opacity, so use these two together. It basically determines how much grass you're going to paint in a particular area. So let's just try these values and let's just click and drag. Okay, so you see we're actually creating bits of grass. Just try clicking and dragging everywhere. Okay, so we want this entire area sort of covered with this grass. Now don't worry about adding too much grass. Some people think, okay, if you add that much grass your computer's going to slow down. It doesn't generally affect your computer that bad, but because we're actually going to be recording this scene using a recorder, computer performance is not an issue. The recorder actually records the scene at a steady 30 frames per second, irrelevant of your frames per second in real time. So even if your computer was only running, let's say 4 frames per second, the recorder would still record 30 frames per second. Now you'll notice that we did paint there, but it's disappeared. So as we get closer, it reappears. This is kind of a clipping effect, so don't repaint over that. I suppose that's to save on computer memory, so you see it does it the further that you scale away. Okay, good. So as we get closer you can see it's even thicker. Alright, that's looking good. So that's covered in one type of grass. Now to get it to look more realistic, it's a good idea to create a variation of different types of grasses. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to create a second type of grass. So click back on your details. We're going to edit details and we're going to add another grass texture. Okay, the target again. We're going to type in grass. It's going to be the same grass type. And this time we do want it to be a bit thicker. So we're actually going to go with these default values. The noise spread, I'm going to raise that up to about 0.8. And what I'm going to do this time is change the color so that it stands out. So this light green color, I'm going to make a darker green color. And this yellowish color I'm going to turn into green as well, but I want this to be really dark. Great, so let's click add, and a brush size a little bit bigger, and our opacity I want them to be much thicker, target strength as well. So let's just start add in these. Oh, sorry, I'm painting with the default grass there, so Control and Z to undo. Make sure that you're clicking on the new grass, and we're just gonna, perhaps that's too much actually, Control Z. So I'm gonna lower these down. Control and Z. I'm actually going to reduce my brush size perhaps. Zoom in quite a bit. There we go, that's much better. Okay, now we're just going to add these intermittently throughout. Gives it that realistic variation of different types of grasses. Okay, great. So now we're starting to make this look a little bit more realistic. Now what we need is a third type of grass to go in here. It's going to be a little bit of a lighter colour than this default grass, and it's going to add yet more variation. Okay, so once again, click on the paint details. We're going to go to Edit Details and add a grass texture. Okay, so it's going to be grass. This time, let's go with this one. Let's just lower this down a bit, so 0.8, and the maximum width of this one, let's go with 1.4. Okay, the minimum height on this one is going to be 0.3, and the maximum height, so we want these to be quite long, 2.4. Okay, noise spread 0.6, and let's also lighten these up quite a bit. Okay, so really light. Let's click Add. Let's go into these now. We want to reduce our brush size down quite a bit. We also want to reduce our opacity and target strength as well. Now let's start painting. Great, so now we've got quite a lot of grass, and what we're going to notice about this grass is that it does animate. Okay, at the moment we're not simulating, so if we now choose to simulate and we press the play button, it instantly goes over to game, but then when we go back into scene, you can now see that all of the grass simulates. It starts waving around and it starts looking quite realistic. Alright, so that looks quite nice. Don't worry about the fact that some of these edges are not blending very well. We will fix that with our post-processing in a later video. Okay, and start to make this looking a lot more professional. This scene is starting to come together now. It's starting to look a lot nicer. So in the next video we might actually add a couple of trees, and we're going to work on this bit here whereby we're going into the water itself.